Time to talk about some Saturday Keeneland. We're going to look at October the 12th and the late pick 5 sequence, races 6 through 10. I am Gino Bacola alongside my good friend Barry Spears. Barry, buddy, it's another really nice Keeneland Saturday. The feature is the QE2, and it's a strong pick 5 sequence. Looks really challenging.
Yeah, this is a really kind of interesting pick 5. I mean, there's some favorites in here that don't look all that great that you might be able to bet against and maybe connect and get a nice little score here.
Well, we are recording this on Thursday afternoon. So far, it looks like Barry has survived some of the worst of another hurricane. You guys have had a couple of them coming at you recently, huh?
Yeah, almost 3 weeks, back to back of stress of this hurricane stuff. Nothing that I'm not used to. I've been through quite a few of them, but it's always an adventure. I can tell you that.
Well, our adventure here is going to be over at Keeneland. For all of you who are playing the races at Keeneland, we encourage you to head on over to drf.com. Shop.drf.com is the place where you can find all the past performances, betting strategies. They have a package that even now you would still save a bunch of money on if you paid for the full Keeneland package. They have betting strategies on Saturdays coming up like this one, where they give you help on how to play the races and how they may be making some of their wagers as we dive in and tell you how we'll be making some of our wagers. Barry, let's get into race number 6, which kicks off this pick 5 sequence. And it's a 6.5 furlong optional claiming allowance. It's a non-winners of 3. And there's not a ton of early speed in this 6.5 furlong race on the dirt, Barry. The horse we have to start with, just from a conversation standpoint, is the number 4 Giant Mischief, who is grade 1 placed, but enters this coming off a 9+ month layoff. So this is a horse who definitely looks very good on paper, and the overall body of work is good. The only really poor race was going a mile and a 16th, and it was in the slop. He was only 2-1 in the Rebel, just to give you an idea of where he was at that point. And since then, he's not run a whole lot. He only had 3 races following the Rebel. They were all in 2023. They were all good, including a 3rd in the grade 1 Malibu. But, we just haven't seen him yet. So you always have to take a little bit of concern with the horse who's going to be a super short price. Now, my own counter would be that this barn is rolling right now. For like a month in a row, they've won with 28 of their last 87. So that's 32% with a $2.14 flat ROI. If you just bet every single Brad Cox horse over the last month, you're making money. He's had 3-race win streak, 3-race win streak, and a 5-race win streak just in the last month. So this barn is really hot right now. Where do you think Giant Mischief stacks up, or how are we going to play him?
I thought the conversation started and ended with Giant Mischief. He just looks a lot better than these horses. The question is the layoff, and Brad Cox does this a lot. I mean, he gives his horses a lot of time, and he's very good at getting them back to the races, pretty well and in shape, ready to run. I don't see there's very, very much in this race in general.
It's a great spot for him. It's a great spot to come back. There's not, and with his running style, he should get a great trip. There's just not very much speed. He might be one of the quicker, if not the quickest, like a little fresh coming off the bench.
Yeah, the only other horses that kind of piqued my attention was the 1 Kavad and the 6.
Those are the exact 2 that I have, because they can sit close or be forwardly placed at least. I don't know if the other horses in here are going to be close enough.
No, they really don't want any part of that early pace, and it should be pretty slow to moderate, and these horses should have a good shot at winning this race. I think Lofty Adjudicator actually does have a little bit more of a chance.
I agree.
On the rise in class, because Kavad sort of, we've seen what he can do against.
He's a measuring stick. You kind of know who he is. I think I'm with you. I think there might be a little more of a ceiling, especially if this horse can get to the lead from the outside, which he may be able to in here.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely going to give Giant Mischief all he can handle, but Giant Mischief just might tower over this field, to be honest.
Yeah, it just depends on, like we said, if he's 80% ready, he still might be able to win this. If it's, if he's really ready, there's no doubt about it. He wins this race. If he's not quite there, or maybe he doesn't get a great trip, I think the two horses that Barry mentioned would be the ones that I would go towards. Lofty Adjudicator, because a positive for him too, he's coming out of races at Belterra, and then he steps up at Ellis. So you're wondering maybe where is he from a class standpoint? If you honestly eliminate that May 16th race, everything else is really good. These races this race at Keeneland is very good back in April when he finished second at 31-1, and he came from way out of it that day.
And Safa's Day is a stakes winner, I believe.
And this is not the kind of trip he's going to get in here. He should get a lot better trip coming from right up forward or sitting close. So he's really honest, and he just seems like he's in great form right now. As you mentioned, the one cutting back from 7.5, that's a little too far from him. The 6.5 is good, and he may not jump up with a race that we haven't seen, as you're pointing out, but he just kind of has a solid style. And if he's right there, maybe Giant Mischief is a little bit short. It wouldn't shock me if these two were there late and he passed Giant Mischief because he's got a little more bottom. Like that's the kind of, if he's sitting there, Giant Mischief is up front and gets softened up a little bit. So he might not be a bad horse to have if you're trying to beat the favorite.
I also think Kavad's probably going to get bet down from that 12-1 too.
He's more like a 6-8-1 shot in here. Half of that,
so.
Feels probably a lot more fair. So yeah, we think the 4 is the horse to beat. Both of us agree that the 1 and the 6 are very logical price horses that you could use. The horses that make sense coming from the back would be the 2 and the 3. Both of them totally logical. I just worry about the trip. They don't seem like they're going to get the pace to run at. If they do line up and go really fast, well, sure, the 3 can come closing.
Sure,
But we're just not projecting it that way. It looks like Bromley probably benefited a little more with the 7.5 there. And he's actually been really good on the synthetic a couple times too. So
I was going to say Bromley's a little sneaky because he can kind of lay closer.
Yeah, of the closers, I wouldn't have a problem including him. It's just harder to make for me a win case for him on top at maybe a shortish price if he is in that 4-1 range, but he definitely fits with them at the level, no doubt about it. And he faced Giant Mischief back in September. That was probably a race that he needed when Giant Mischief was a little bit better at the time. Race number 6 kicks off the late pick 5. It'll all be about how you want to play Giant Mischief coming off the long layoff. Let's move to race number 7, my friend. We have maiden special weights. These are 2-year-old fillies going 6 furlongs on the dirt. When we want to start the conversation again, it's going to be with Brad Cox, first-time starter, Keepsake, Lures, Flavian Pratt. Always have to take a look. And the barn's been really good with first-time starters, as you would expect, just right around that percentage. I think the last 5 years, 23% with first-time starters. Dam was a multiple stakes winner, 2 siblings, both winners player. The 4, I like this horse's races. I like the body of work so far. You have the good debut effort, then came back, didn't really like the slop, and now the blinkers come on. So I think that'll really help this one stay in the mix. The 2 showed speed. Contemplate, wouldn't be shocked to see this filly take another little step forward, and at least we know she has pace. And to the outside, the 12 is another one that has run well when we've seen her run so far. So those are some of the major players in here. Talk about horses that you like, Barry. Who do you want to use? Who do you want to toss? How do you see this 7th?
Yeah, this race kind of seems like it might heat up a little bit. I mean, you figure the 1 who didn't get a good start last time probably wants to be closer to the lead. The 2 definitely wants it. And some of these first-time starters have some really flashy works. I would expect there's going to be a scramble for the lead here. So, the difficult thing in races like this where the horses have no form is like, who is it in this race that can just sit off of the pace?
And because we don't really know the form of any of these horses. Like you were saying, Taverna, I like, and I'm projecting Taverna to get a nice trip. But if they have the blinkers coming on, and maybe they want to be more forwardly placed, it wouldn't shock me to see that. I just think she'll get the trip. But I agree with you. When you don't know these horses and they're so lightly raced, you don't really know what their running styles are, and they could flip quite a bit from start 1 to start 2 or start 3.
Yeah, that's why in these kind of races, I always try to demand a price unless the horse just looks like a complete standout and it's just on paper, everything you've heard about the horse is just a complete standout. Because Keepsake does look formidable in the spot.
Absolutely.
He's got a really nice string of works. But what's his price going to be? What's her price going to be? That's really the question. And it might be too low for a first-time starter, and that's where you got to look for other options. I tend to think horses with talent show it in the morning. In the 9, Miss Farrow kind of fits that bill. I mean,
Absolutely.
She's been really quick in the morning, and sometimes the talent can supersede some of the questions about the pace and the running style.
Yeah.
Just having this horse be able to get position may be better than, being laggy early and kind of slow.
She checks some nice boxes too, like little things you're looking for with a first-time starter. She has a dam who was a 3-time winner. All of the dam's races came on the grass, but was a stakes winner and a 3-time winner. She has, I believe, 4 winning siblings. So you look through and there's like some decent siblings that have won some races in the form. And the barn, while not overwhelming with first-time starters, I think over the last 5 years, 11%. So what that tells you is when they have the right horse, they can win first time out.
Absolutely.
It's not that that's something that they crank every horse up to do, be ready to rock first time out, but with the right horse in the right spot, they can do it. So those numbers all make sense to me. I think this is absolutely a pick 4, pick 5 horse to use.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, the horse has been at Keeneland the whole time.
Yep.
Which is a plus, but that's
pointing for a Keeneland race.
Right. And September 26th, that work in particular really kind of stands out to me. The 2 out of 53 that day, September 26th, I'm pretty sure most of the good horses were out there working at that point in time. So, I want to give Miss Farrow a really good chance in this spot.
Yep, I agree. I had the 9 pick second in here. Kept pointing out a few times the 4 Taverna I have a shout out
Picks,
to
Please is actually another one that kind of falls in that sort of category and maybe a little bit better because the works are actually longer than, there's a couple of 5 furlong works in there that I kind of like in races like this.
Who else did we need to talk to? We talked about the 2. We spoke about the 12 a little bit.
What about the 8?
That's the one I was going to go to. Yeah, the 8. Just based off of there's not a whole lot here on like immediate pedigree, but just based off of like the tab, the barn being really solid, how good of the year it's been for this barn. Only sibling was a multiple winner here. Yeah, this horse just feels like she fits in here. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see her run well. She lures Ortiz. Like there's nothing that's overwhelming that jumps out at you. But again, this barn has had a great year pointing their horses for this meet. They've already had a really nice start to the meet. It just seems like the horses they're bringing here are running, and they've been pointing to run right here at this meet.
Absolutely. I'm just kind of interested to see how the betting,
the money goes.
Shakes out. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because both the 8 and the 9 feel like horses you want to include in the mix if possible. A very challenging race, and with the prospect of it being a fast early pace too. That's what makes it even more challenging is you went through a lot of these horses from the 12 outside to the 7 who showed a little bit of speed. Basically all of the horses, the 4 out of the 5 horses that have run have showed speed. So all of the horses that have run, you kind of expect them to show speed back. And then a couple of these first-time starters have been training really well in the mornings. Not the easiest race in the world. Barry talked about Miss Farrow. We both thought the 8 Mezcal Mule was a little bit interesting. The 6, definitely the first-time starter to beat. I thought the 4 is the one with the experienced Taverna, who I'll try to lean on a little bit too. Could be a nice day was a good one last week too for shout out 90210 Beverly Hills, Brendan Walsh, trainer Brendan Walsh. I love me some Brandon Walsh, not Brendan. Can't, I know the 90210 fans will come after me there, but I see him every time and I think 90210. Let's move to the feature, Barry. we got the QE2 coming up next, going 1 1/8 miles. This is for 3-year-old fillies. The horse that's been pointing for this race all along, and she will take a good amount of money, is She Feels Pretty. And she's a nice horse, no doubt about it. She going 1 1/8 miles though is definitely pushing it for her. It's her ceiling. Like she so far she has not proved that she wants to go this far. You can see this year, mile really impressive, but in the July and the August races, she was in a good spot. And she just didn't have a whole lot of finish in those 1 3/16 and even in the 1 1/16 race. Now the blinkers will come on for her. And she actually seems like a filly where like a little equipment change like that could really help just get a bit more out of her. From a talking standpoint, though, she's really solid. And she's actually been a little more tactical this year too, Barry. Last year, she was a little more, you kind of expected her to come from more out of it. This year, she can sit pretty close. So she's one of the horses to beat. I think the European runners are very logical. Soprano has a couple losses to Porta Fortuna, who is going to come over here and run in the Breeders' Cup and be one of the top choices, I think, in the mile. So very, very good form for Soprano and what she's done recently. And the other European runner is also very good. Candala, lightly raced. Like those two wouldn't surprise me. I think I prefer the 5 of the 2 of them. So I feel like 3-5 will probably be the top 2 betting choices in here. Talk to us about how you see this race and some of the horses on your radar.
I actually think the 6 will probably take some action, even though,
yeah,
she hasn't been out in a while and going.
She'll take some money.
The furthest she's ever been, but the connections themselves will probably attract a lot of attention.
Yep.
But, I had the notion that She Feels Pretty is just a cut below. It's strange because she runs well, but she just doesn't win. She's a cash machine. She's always right there, but just doesn't get into the winner's circle as often as you would think. A horse that's going to be, 5-2 or lower in this race. And there's some opportunities here. There's other horses that have run good. I mean, I also, was thinking like in this spot, a horse like Soprano might be a single. This horse is, run pretty much well every time this horse showing up at the track and has been getting better and better and better. I don't see why this horse can't be the goods in this spot, been facing better overseas and should probably have a class edge on these horses.
She's pretty tactical too. I think the running line, I'm pretty sure that was just wrong, that last comment line, because she was 3rd on the inside.
I was going to say she was
close. Yeah, she was sitting really close. She didn't have a whole lot of room. She backed up, or no, she was she was close up 3rd, held 3rd, but she was right there, like right off of it, even 2nd for a lot of it, and then kind of moved up into it, and she got run down by a couple really nice horses. So I like seeing horses that come over showing at least a little bit of positional speed, because it doesn't mean they have to be dead last. I think she's a horse to beat. Like I prefer her to She Feels Pretty. Like I like She Feels Pretty as a horse. I don't like her at 1 1/8 miles as much. I just don't think. I think that's where after a mile, that's when it gets really hard for her. She just doesn't have the same sort of finish. That would be my only concern with Soprano. It's not that much of a concern. It's just I haven't seen her prove it at 1 1/8 miles. She started her career at 5 and has stretched out. So she wasn't a horse that they just thought immediately distance horse. But class-wise, I think what she's proven is much better than most of these. Now, you do see that same horse, Friendly Soul, in the running lines with Candala to the outside. I just, from like we were saying, tactically, I think the 5 fits better the first time in U.S. racing. Like a little more early speed, can put herself into the race a little bit more. The one who kind of intrigues me, Barry, I'm going to probably use 4-5 on a ticket or two. The 4.
Yeah, the 4 definitely.
Waves of Mischief.
My interest. Yeah.
And the distance-wise, this is a horse who will get the 1 1/8 miles.
Yes.
Yep. And can sit close. The race in the Hilltop, when she lost to She Feels Pretty, she was way behind that day. And that race was on a good turf course as well. The last 2, they've been really nice. And she's stepping forward. Speed figure-wise, she's not far out of it. And I told you my guy, Brandon's going to have a big day at the Peach Pit on Saturday over there, hanging out with Dylan and Brenda and all of them. So Brendan Walsh, again, Waves of Mischief, maybe a little bit of a price in here at 12-1. But it seems like we both think Soprano's the one to beat.
Yeah, I think so. But I'm going to really give the two, Caitlin Her Greatness, a real good shot here. That first race off the bench on July 6th was pretty good. And I know it wasn't against like the best of the best, but the horse showed a clear improvement from when he went off, or when she, previously was running before she went on a little layoff from February to July. And one thing about buyer patterns you'll notice is when horses run on the grass the first time, it's sort of, what I treat it as is like a benchmark. So that's like where they're beginning. Yep. Most horses will improve on that buyer speed figure every time, from the first start on the grass to the second. So you see the benchmark here of 82, even though it was in a shorter race against lesser competition, it's still, the horse got the job done. Then stepped up into restricted company on the synthetic, going the same trip, just missed. Then goes against the boys and wins.
Yep, beat him in the King's Plate.
Going even further. So I think people might dismiss that grass race. And in fact, she might actually be better on the grass.
She's got a nice ceiling. She can keep stepping forward. She's honest. She's got upside. Tori jumps aboard, which is a positive. I have no problem using her. She'll be a very fair price at probably double-digit odds.
Yeah, I'm thinking more like 10, 9 to 1-ish.
I agree. I think she'll be right
perfect. And that's perfect for me in this spot.
Yeah, there are some nice horses in here, and there's some reasons to we just poked some holes in She Feels Pretty, and the thing is, she's gonna be there. She's gonna be close. It's just gonna be late where you're gonna be worried if you don't have her. It'll be late where she probably won't have that oomph. But it's not like she's been running poorly. It just feels like, at a short price, I don't think 1 1/8 is her best. And as you were pointing out, she's had some opportunities this year. Maybe the blinkers can put it all together for her. Absolutely. And this is a good barn that can figure things out. But I would love to see a little more in her last two when she's been heavily bet and in spots where she probably should have got the job done.
She's kind of unreliable. I think that's the best word for it. I mean, she runs well every time. It's just like, man, if she gets a field that she can beat, I think she could win at 1 1/8. But I'm not sure this isn't the field to do that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. 5 and 10 will take a good amount of money, but we like the 5. 10 has class, but you never know with horses that are making their first U.S. start. So right off the bat, all 3 of the horses that'll probably take the most money, you can poke a couple holes in. We didn't even really mention horses like Grayosh, who just ran by She Feels Pretty on the square. Just got by her. No excuses that day for She Feels Pretty. Pounce she's one that I'm worried about at 1 1/8.
Very inconsistent, this horse. So, you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah.
Right? Like, she'll throw up a monster effort, but then she goes off for him for a race or two. So she's really hard to trust. But what makes this race challenging, a lot of horses can win with the right type of trip. Just make sure you get some value on whomever in here. I mentioned the 4 as a value play. Barry talked about the 2. We both think the 5, Soprano, looks like the horse to beat. Well, let's move to race number 9 on Saturday at Keeneland. This one is optional 80, non-winners of 2. They're going to go 1 1/16 on the dirt in here. We have the Japanese runner that will take a good amount of money. This one is your 9 to 5 morning line favorite, dropping out of back-to-back graded stakes races. In the West Virginia Governors was 3rd, and that was a really good effort, honestly. If you go back and watch, this horse was right there and didn't look like he was ever going to win. But at the top of the lane, he made a 3-wide move in between horses, and you're like, okay, he's wide, he's going to back up. He just kept trying all the way. He really kept fighting. That impressed me. And then the Charlestown race was just too far for him. And if you eliminate that race and say it's too far, you go back and look at his form now. The mile and an eighth on the turf wasn't even bad, but we're not using the turf as like a gauge for him. So, he's the horse to start with, Barry. At least he's going to take a lot of money, and he's run well in his last few, but he's going to be a pretty short price in here.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I mean, speed figure wise, he's kind of a standout.
Yep.
But he's not a complete cinch. The outside post isn't ideal. There's some speed inside of him which isn't ideal. But we'll see. I mean, he's definitely, like you said, the horse to beat, and the race kind of goes through him.
Yep.
Horse that catches my eye at a decent price is the 7 Ben Franklin. If this pace heats up, which it certainly could, a horse like Ben Franklin should be right there. I mean, if you look at this horse's body of work, you see that he was running in the beginning of the year at Oaklawn, and right in the thick of everything too. Probably the toughest part of the meet is January, February, March. This horse has 2 wins in that span in 2 seconds.
And that's not a track where his running style plays nicely either.
Correct. And that's what I was going to bring up. I mean, it's not really a place you'll see closers just make headway, and this horse was blowing by people. Then kind of went off form, and they laid the horse off, rightfully so. Comes back September 15th, and honestly doesn't run a bad race. Kind of needed it. I mean, even the running line kind of hints that this horse needed that race. He was on the rail, probably not the best place to be at Churchill, going a mile and an eighth. And I think that springboards this into a race that this horse can handle. And they switch back to Brian Hernandez, who has that win back in February at Oaklawn, and then another good run before they laid this horse off back in November 2023. So all signs are pointing to this horse running his best race, whether that wins or not, or comes close, or what have you. This is the kind of stuff that I like to bet on, because, you're going to get an optimal performance out of this horse. Whether he wins or not is another story, but you're going to get your price.
There are 3 horses in this race that have similar templates. Now, I'm not saying they're just kind of like some of the things we're hitting on. So look at the 4 also, the same exact race that he comes out of, the Ben Franklin race, and the same exact thing. This is a horse who was off from December to September. And if you toss his last 2, you throw out the race before going to the bench, because that was the race that sent him. And then if we just say he needed the race, exactly like we say with Ben Franklin, they were 5th and 7th in that race. They finished a length within each other. And now both of them can take a nice step forward in this race and get back to some of the races they were running last year, which are pretty good. And this is a horse who's a Pennsylvania bred, but he was fine against Open Company when he was facing Stakes Company at Laurel and at Parks. That last one was at Aqueduct. He is one that probably needed that last race, could shake some of the rust off. And they both have similar running styles. The other one whose running style is completely opposite of them, but kind of has the same thing, is the 9, who you kind of cannot use the August 25th race as any gauge of this horse's talent. That was a sprint. He has not run in a year and 8 months. So he just needed to get a race under him. And he lost to the horse that we were just talking about, Lofty Adjudicator, who actually is in really nice form right now and is just a horse that can sit really close. So the 6 breaks poorly out of the gate, first start in a year and a half plus, and just runs around in a circle. Now gets to stretch back out where he did all of his good work going longer. And maybe he can get back to 1 or 2 of those good races. He's a massive price in here. I don't know if he's good enough. I'm not sure, but those are like the template that we were talking about with Ben Franklin, horses who have some back form that's good. Were off for a while, probably needed a race or 2 to shake some of the rust off, and now get back to a race where they should run a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, you can even make the case for the 12 surface to air.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you put a line through that turf race, and then the mile and an eighth race is
and he's facing Tapit Trice so that race he's facing Tapit Trice in Highland Falls. Look at how strong that race has now been since then. Tapit Trice just won the Woodward, and Highland Falls won the Jockey Club. Those 2 horses are both going to be in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Right. And then, this year, this horse has been running very, very well. I mean, if you just, scratch out the red bank, this horse is right there too, and might even sit an okay trip, depending on what the 9 does. If the 9 kind of runs off, this race might get really wide open.
And that's such an interesting X factor in the race, because it looks like there's a good amount of speed, but the 9 might be kind of faster than all of them if they wanted to stretch out. And then it would put some of these other speed horses in a weird spot that aren't used to it. A lot of times those horses kind of pack it in. So this is a really challenging race that you start with the 11, but because of the all the other speed in here, I don't know if it's just as easy as this one. Race number 9, optional 80, non-winners of 2. The horse like the 5 is 7-2 on the morning line, has done nothing wrong, but now he's got to come off of a long layoff, 11 months, and he's been really slow.
Launching from dead last.
in both of his starts. So yes. That's going to be tough. You got to come off the long layoff. You basically missed facing 3-year-olds. He went from facing 2-year-olds to now he's facing older horses, so that he had to skip that. We don't know really if he's going to get the pace. Maybe he will, but some questions for Parchment Party. Super talented in those 2 starts for Bill Mott. Race number 9. Anything else you want to mention here, buddy?
Nope. I think we got it covered, man. That's a tough race, though.
It is. Non-winners of 2, allowance runners, 2-year-olds going a mile on the turf. That's how we close things out in race number 10. Let's see. Just from a talking standpoint, it is a really, really competitive race, because when you're looking who am I going to talk about? I don't even know. Who's going to be the overwhelming favorite? I think from the outside, Kurahi's going to take some money just because you see the horse that dropped out of a stakes race and maybe stretching out, has a little bit of speed. No doubt the 5 Blue Coast will take some money. That's another one for Brendan Walsh, who's going to be having a great Saturday, hopefully, with lots of live runners. You expect the 1 Poster, first time out of the box winner. That horse will take some money, but this could be a race with a bunch of horses between 7-2 and 10-1, 4-1 and 10-1. Because I don't think anybody should be lower than 7-2 in here at all.
I wouldn't think so, but they'll zero in on somebody. I was thinking, maybe the 8, but I mean, it's just so hard because all these, you don't have much to go off of. They all sort of look similar. You just got to split hairs and try to find one. I'm not really sure who's going to attract a lot of attention.
So the horse I like in here the most is the 6.
Yes.
The Brigade.
Yes, I like that horse a lot here, actually.
Cassie's just been awesome with 2-year-olds all year long. He's been rolling at Saratoga. Look at the horse's form. The debut had some trouble going 5 on the synthetic. Just put a line through that. Let's look at the last 2 turf races. That August 1st race was really good. The horse was saving ground inside, was 5th, was about 5 lengths off, moved up the challenge, 4 wide at the top of the lane. Extremely impressive win. And in that win, 2 horses that he beat came back to win their next start. Patrick's Promise came back to win a maiden special weight. He got put up via DQ. He jumped up and earned a 64 Beyer speed figure that day when he won. Tony Eclipse came back, and he's raced twice on the dirt, and he's been really good in his 2 dirt starts. He broke his maiden and came back and was second in a stakes race and earned really nice speed figures in both of those. So the Brigade beat a good group in the debut, and the positive, he showed us that he can come from off the pace, which I love. For some of these young horses, some of these horses that are lightly raced, you think the 1, the inside draw, he'll probably show speed again. The 2 was forwardly placed. I don't think he's as fast as some of the others in here, but he probably wants to be close up. The 5, Blue Close, he wants to be close up. The 7 was right on the lead. Imagine they want to be close up. The best race for the 8 horse came when sitting really close and right next to the front end. So I'd imagine, the 11, Lovely Regalo from the outside. The 12 is probably the fastest, stretching out from the 5.5 furlong races. So I thought they'd be going pretty quick in here. I love the fact that we've seen this horse pass and then came back in the stakes race at Kentucky. That race was a $1 million race. This horse was 60-1 that day, and didn't even run that poorly. Finished 5th, but the way the race shaped up, he kind of moved into it at the top of the lane. The horses who finished 1, 2, 3 separated, and then there was a group of horses behind them, and he was right there. He really wasn't bad. That was a tough track to make up a ton of ground on too. Barry, remember how many days when it was just speed horses rushing in that short meet and they would open up and win by 8, 10 lengths? Horses like this never really had a shot. He's coming back to a much more logical spot. 3rd start off the bench. This is going to be one of the horses I give out on the weekend as like a play I like at 5-1 or above.
Yes, I concur. I think everything's going to come together for this horse. One horse I'll give a shout out to is the 4 Coal Battle.
Yep.
I think this horse just didn't.
He was in front of the Brigade.
Right.
They were right next to each other in that same race last time out.
And just didn't have a chance.
No.
From the way outside and getting back to a better post position on a traditional sort of layout, I think might help this horse.
And he won on the slop, but he's a horse that was meant for the turf, right? He wasn't one of those horses that was put in for the sloppy track and kept in there. Like, he was supposed to be a turf horse. His dam was a winner on the turf. And then he improved speed figure wise on the grass. It wasn't a bad race. It just did not shape up for him at all. He was like the best of the rest. After the 3 horses that finished 1, 2, 3 made their early moves, nothing else happened the rest of the race. And there was a big clump of horses behind them. Coal Battle was in that mix, and the Brigade was. I have no problem with Coal Battle. I like the horses that showed me they could pass horses.
Right. And he seems
race
to be the best closer out of them all. And I'd take that at 12-1 in this kind of race. You betcha.
So many directions to go, but 6 for me, the Brigade. Barry talks about the 4 Coal Battle also. I'm going to probably throw the 12 in some because I think there are versions where he might be the fastest.
The 7 was the one that I would throw in.
The 7.
Classic example.
Yeah, just a wild card.
Yeah, because I think that horse dominated. You don't really know how good this horse is. Pratt ends up here.
For the hot barn right now.
And they paid a lot of money for this horse too.
I don't think this horse is going to get bet that much either. Like, he'll maybe 6 to 8, but I don't think he's going to be one of those short price Brad Cox runners that you're almost always having to play.
Yeah, this is a tough read.
It is. Challenging way to close out that pick 5 on Saturday at Keeneland. Man, it's crazy. We're only a few weeks away from the Breeders' Cup right now we sit here on October the 10th recording, and we're talking about races for October the 12th. So get ready, folks. We have a little bit of a calm before the storm coming up in a few weeks. That's going to be the Breeders' Cup. We'll have tons of coverage here, free handicapping previews of a lot of the races, all the races. I'm not sure exactly how it'll set up. I have to check the schedule with a couple of the different places I'm working, but I can tell you one gentleman that will be busy doing some previews with me, this guy right here, Barry Spears, when it comes to Breeders' Cup time. My man, we are so glad to hear that you and the family did not get impacted too much by all that wet weather. We love you. Always appreciate the help that you give us here. And I think I told you yesterday, my mom was texting me last night. She was up. She was excited after the Dodgers won. She's the biggest Dodger fan in the world. So she was jacked up. She said, "Oh my gosh, I keep seeing all this stuff on the weather. How's your friend Barry doing? Is he okay? How's him and the family? Are they in the middle of all this?" I said, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I talked to him. He's not too bad." So even Mrs. B wants to know how you're doing and is checking in on you all the time.
Thanks, Mrs. B. We're doing all right.
Good to hear. So you and the family have a great weekend. Good luck in all your plays. You and I will be going back and forth like always. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, if you can subscribe to the channel, throw up a like. Those are real helpful when it just gets to, spreading this around. More people see it. And anytime we are talking about races, let us know, who do you like? Or if there was maybe a horse that we didn't talk a whole lot about and you have a question, post it on there. I always see them. The notifications come to me. I'll respond as quick as I get them and let you know. And some of these times, maybe for Breeders' Cup, Barry, maybe we can figure out if we can do one of them like we used to do with our streams. We'll do one live and we can have people ask questions.
Yeah,
and we can kind of go to like, they want to know a question about the, Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint. We could pull that one up, look at the horse they want to mention, talk to them a little bit about that. So maybe that's something we can do come just a few weeks leading into the Breeders' Cup so we can interact with all of you out there. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, Barry, buddy. We'll probably hit Keeneland up again next week. I feel like when they're around, we got to take advantage of the great racing at Keeneland and look at those ones as much as possible. Hope all of you have a great weekend. Head to shop.drf.com for all of the help that you need when you're playing the races at Keeneland and make that money.